My name is Mitchell, and I never thought I'd write something like this in a forum, but after what happened, it seems like the only way to get things out there and try to organize everything that's left inside me. This happened in 2014, and to this day I avoid overthinking these days, because whenever I think, my whole body reacts. I can't explain it. It's as if my brain rejects the memory, but it insists on coming back. At the time, I lived alone in an old apartment in Portland, Maine. The building was 3 stories high, made of red bricks, a bit weathered but well located and relatively inexpensive. It was all I needed at the time. I worked as a manager in a small print shop downtown, which was great because I was able to reconcile it with college. I was starting to organize myself, and that included living alone, something that has always been a desire of mine since adolescence. My apartment was on the 2nd floor. It was small, with a living room integrated into the kitchen, a bedroom, and a bathroom. The living room window faced straight to the street, and the bedroom window to the back of the building, where there was a small alley that ended in a high cement wall. It was a quiet place, except for the occasional sound of trucks passing by on Main Street 2 blocks away. The building had 4 apartments per floor, and the walls were thin. I knew when my neighbor across the street got into a fight with her boyfriend, and when the man on the 3rd floor came in late and stumbled up drunk. Despite this, it was quiet. No one interfered in anyone's life. I talked more with the manager, a woman named Nancy, who lived on the ground floor and liked to take care of the plants at the entrance. Other than that, everyone was in their corner. That day, a random Tuesday. I woke up early as always. I drank my coffee, put on my coat, and went to live my day. Everything is normal. I left at 8:15 a.m., came back around 6:20 p.m. I remember stopping at the corner convenience store to buy milk and a bag of crackers. When I entered the building, I noticed that the light in the 2nd floor hallway was flickering. Nothing too strange. It had happened before. The building was old, and maintenance was not always done on time. I opened the door of the apartment, left the keys on the hook next to the entrance, and went straight to the bedroom to take off my shoes. Everything was as I left it. No sign that anyone had been there, but as soon as I entered the kitchen, I noticed something out of place. The chair at the table was slightly set back, as if someone had sat there. It may seem silly, but I always left the chairs aligned. My mother, she taught me from a young age to be disciplined and organized. I left everything in its place. Living alone, this habit only increased. Seeing that made me stop for a moment. I stared at the chair, trying to remember if I could have left it that way in the morning. I thought so. I went to the bathroom, washed my face, changed, and continued with the routine. I turned on the TV, sat on the couch, and zapped without paying much attention. Later, I ate some frozen pasta and went to sleep around 11 p.m. It was in the middle of the night that something woke me up. I don't know what exactly. I just remember opening my eyes with my heart racing as if I had been startled. The room was dark. I got up slowly, wondering if I had heard any noise. Nothing, all in silence. But my whole body was on alert, as if something wasn't right. I went to the living room, turned on the light. The air looked different, as if someone had been there until a few seconds ago. I looked at the windows, locked. Front door, locked too. I checked the room, the bathroom. All right. But when I returned to the room, I saw something that made me stop. The remote control was on top of the couch, on the opposite side of where I was sitting before going to sleep. I always left the control on the coffee table, and I never, ever put it there. It was another silly detail, I know, but it caught me in a way that left me paralyzed for several minutes. I tried to convince myself that I could have done that, and forgotten. I forced myself to believe that. I went back to the bedroom, left the hallway light on, and closed the door. I lay down, but I couldn't sleep. My eyes were fixed on the ceiling, and any crack made my heart race. Around 5 a.m., I dozed off for a few minutes and woke up to the sound of something falling in the kitchen. I ran there and found one of the chairs fallen, the same one that was out of place the day before. I knew she couldn't have fallen on her own. The base was firm, and she was away from the table but at a steady angle. For her to fall like that, it took strength, or someone would have touched her on purpose. My instinct was to look at the back window, which was just above the sink. Closed, locked. It was impossible for anyone to enter there. My head started spinning with 1,000 hypotheses, but none made sense. Not in that scenario. I took another walk around the apartment. Nothing. No sign of break-in, nothing out of place but the chair. But the feeling that someone had been there with me that morning was undeniable, as if I had shared the space with a presence that I couldn't see, but that knew exactly where I was and what I was doing. I remember standing in the middle of the room, not knowing what to do. I didn't want to call anyone because I had no proof of anything. How to explain that something fell and I don't think it was the wind? Who would believe it? Even so, I decided to put a chair against the door as a kind of improvised alarm. If someone tried to get in, I would listen. I went back to the room and waited for the sun to rise. When the day dawned, I left early for work with some excuse just to get out of there. And that was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up exhausted. I slept little and badly, tossing and turning all night. It was still early, but the sun was already coming in through the curtainless windows. The walls of the apartment were silent. Nothing else had happened, and for a brief moment I almost convinced myself that it was all a nightmare. But then I saw a glass of water on the kitchen floor. That had really happened. I took the glass with trembling hands and put it in the sink. I took my cell phone, looked at my watch, and went straight to the shower. There was class at 10, and despite whatever that was, I needed to get on with life. In college, I forced myself to maintain normality. I pretended everything was fine. After college, I went straight to work, and even with my head racing, I fulfilled the tasks of the day. But I couldn't help but notice how strange my body was. I had the feeling of being watched with every step I took, as if someone was right behind, ready to touch my shoulder. I returned home early, determined not to stay until nightfall on the street. It was as if the fall of night brought along that same oppressive tension of events. I bought a sandwich on the way and avoided entering the building by talking to the key neighbors. I went up in the elevator with my heart in my throat and breathed a sigh of relief when the door of my apartment closed behind me. I lay on the couch and tried to watch something light, but any louder sound made me turn my head. Little by little, I noticed small changes in the environment. Things that I knew were one way and now they were another. A chair a little off the table. One of the doors to the kitchen cabinet open. I always closed everything. The towel I had left in the bathroom was now in my room. None of these things were a scandal in themselves, but altogether they created a growing tension that gave no respite. Around 20 o'clock, while preparing a simple pasta, something happened that really moved me. I was stirring the pan when I heard the sound of the doorbell. The touch was short, dry. I went to the door carefully. I peeked through the peephole, but the hallway was completely empty, silent, as if no one had ever been there. I felt an icy shiver go up my spine. I took a deep breath and convinced myself that maybe it was some upstairs kid playing a trick. I went back to the kitchen, but the spoon had disappeared from the counter, and at that moment, I knew that something was inside my apartment with me. I locked the door, closed the windows, checked all the rooms, nothing. No sign of break-in, no one hiding. It was as if he was going crazy. I decided to go to bed earlier with all the lights on. I locked myself in the room and lay there staring at the ceiling. It was almost 2 in the morning when the lamp flashed for the first time. Then again, and then it completely erased. I was in absolute silence, listening, and it was in this silence that I listened. One breath, low, paused, coming from outside the room, and then steps, slow, dragged, making their way down the narrow corridor to the living room. Each step made the ground creak as if someone were barefoot. My heart was beating so hard that it felt like it was going to come out of my throat. I didn't move. I just stood there, trying to convince myself that it was just another outbreak of my tired brain. But then something or someone stopped in front of my door, and he stayed there, stationary. The doorknob wiggled, slowly, as if trying to see if it was locked. I moved away from the bed, took out my cell phone and called the police. I whispered, what was happening? I asked for help. I stayed on the phone with the attendant, trying not to make noise. In less than 10 minutes, 2 police officers knocked on the door. I ran out of the room and opened it in a cold sweat. They searched the Entire apartment. But of course there was no one, no signs of break-in. They asked me if I used any medication, if I was under stress. And as much as I denied it, I knew I wasn't going to convince anyone. That night I slept on the couch with the TV on, still dressed and with pepper spray by my side. I didn't really fall asleep, I just dozed off, but without being able to rest. During the night, the TV turned off by itself twice, and in one of them, when I looked at the reflection of the window, I swear by everything I saw a silhouette standing behind the sofa. I turned on impulse, but there was nothing. Only silence, only fear, just the certainty that it wasn't my head playing tricks. There was something there, and she didn't want to be seen. Not in the conventional way. She was more subtle, more patient. When dawn came, I knew I couldn't stay there much longer, but I also knew that if I left, it could follow me. It was a strange feeling, as if I was being tested. As if that thing wanted to see as far as I could take. In the days that followed, I tried to get back to some routine. I started going out more, studying in libraries, going to busy cafes. I wanted to surround myself with people, life, normality. But it was useless. The thing, whatever it was, didn't need a physical place to be present. She followed me like a shadow clinging to her skin. I could feel his presence even surrounded by people. It was as if she was behind me, watching me non-stop, waiting for the right moment to manifest again. And inevitably, it always manifested itself. It started with the mirrors. The one in the bathroom was the first. I wore it every morning until I realized that for fractions of a second, the reflection did not follow me. It was almost imperceptible, as if he was late for an instant. I blinked and the reflection flashed half a second later. At times, he seemed to look at me differently. It wasn't just a reflex, it was someone inside. One day, as I shave, I swear, I saw something behind me in the mirror, a hunched figure like a thin, crouching figure, motionless. I turned around in fright, and of course there was nothing. But the sound of something dragging across the floor kept echoing for seconds, as if he had just left the scene. After that, I covered some mirrors with sheets. Others I simply broke and threw away. My friends began to notice that something was wrong. I moved away, becoming strange, paranoid. But how to explain that? How can I tell someone that there is a presence that does not show itself, but that is always there, testing my limits? I tried to record the events with my cell phone. I recorded audios during the night, but what was heard later in the recordings was only silence, when in fact they were unintelligible whispers, as if they were voices underwater. And the most disturbing thing, some of these sounds had breathing noises, very close to the microphone. One night, out of sheer desperation, I went to sleep at my friend Matthew's house. He lived with his sister in a simple but cozy townhouse. I felt relieved to be in another environment. The house was bright, full of life, smells of food, television sound. Matthew lent me the guest room, and I slept for the first time in weeks, with a slight trace of security. But around 4 o'clock in the morning I woke up, not by noise, not even for nightmare. I woke up with the sensation, the same one from before, the weight on the chest, the heavy air. The impression of being watched. I got up slowly, turned on the light, and in the reflection of the closet door I saw she was there, bent over in the corner of the room near the desk. It felt like part of the shadows, but I knew that was not a shadow. It was a body, a thin, contorted body, as if the bones were in the wrong place. And the scariest thing, faceless. An emptiness where there should be eyes, mouth, nose. Just a dark and shapeless mass. I was paralyzed for seconds, unable to scream. But then, out of nowhere, she disappeared. It didn't run. Alone. Disappeared. As if he were never there. But I knew I did. My whole body knew. I ran out of the room, woke Matthew up, and said I needed to leave. He thought it was some anxiety crisis. He tried to calm me down, but I needed to get out of there. I took my things and returned home, shaking. And when I entered the apartment, for the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt resignation. It was as if that thing wanted me to understand. No matter where I go, no matter what I do, she will be with me. I am her new home. And worse, over time, I began to understand that she fed on my fear. The events became more frequent, but never repetitive. She adapted, as if I knew exactly what scared me the most. Sometimes he made breathing noises in the hallway. Others, he threw objects on the floor when I was in another room. By this time, my health was already going down the drain. He didn't eat properly, he didn't sleep, he avoided contact with people. He was pale with deep dark circles under his eyes. One day, as I got out of the shower, I noticed a bruise on my arm, a purple, large, shoulder length, and at the center of it, 5 rounded marks as if they were fingers, as if something had held me tightly while I slept. I took pictures, thought about seeking medical help, but gave up. What was I going to say? That I was grabbed by an invisible entity? It was at that time that I started writing everything. I needed to put it somewhere. I started with a notebook. Then I moved on to the computer. Recording the events was a way to keep my sanity, or at least pretend to be trying. And little by little, I noticed a pattern. She always appeared when I started to believe that everything was going back to normal. When I relaxed, when I laughed at some stupid joke on the internet, when 2 days went by without any strange events, that's when it came up, to remind me that I would never be free again. On one of those rare days when I was able to leave without feeling that something was behind me, I decided to visit an old used bookstore in the center. It was a stuffy place with a strong smell of old paper and damp wood. I've always liked to rummage through used books, but that day I was running away from home, or more accurately, from her. As he walked through the narrow corridors, pulling random books from the shelves, a gray-haired lady approached. He wore a thick coat despite the heat and stared at me with small, intense eyes, as if analyzing me. She asked if I was looking for something specific. I denied it without much patience, but she didn't walk away. He said that dark things sometimes follow sensitive people. At the time, I froze. She didn't seem to be trying to scare me. She spoke in a soft, almost maternal tone. I remained silent, and she came a little closer, as if she wanted to protect me from prying eyes. "There's something about you that's been touched," she said, "and the one who plays doesn't want to let go anymore." I was cold. I asked almost in a whisper if she knew what it was. She shook her head. "It's not one thing, it is an absence, an emptiness that sucks in what is alive. And the more you resist, the hungrier she feels." Before I could answer, the lady walked away and disappeared between the shelves. I searched for her for almost 20 minutes, but no one in the second-hand bookstore said they had seen her. When I left there, I felt even more emptied. And worse, when I got home, I found the front door ajar. I was sure I had locked her up. I entered slowly, with my cell phone in hand and camera on. The house was silent, but strange. The furniture seemed to be a few inches out of place. Tiny details out of place, as if someone had passed by imitating the organization I had. Even the smell was different, a slight rust odor and moisture in the air. From that day on, I started dreaming of a corridor, always the same, dark, narrow, with a floor that looked like rotten wood. I walked barefoot, and with each step I heard something crawling behind me. When I looked back, there was only darkness. But I felt it. Something dragged on, slow, patient. In one of these dreams, I had the impression that she whispered my name, but in an inverted way, as if the language itself no longer made sense to her. I woke up sweating, screaming, and the room was always colder than it should be. On a specific morning, I woke up to the sound of the intercom. It was 3:23 in the morning. I went to answer, thinking that someone might be in trouble. On the other side, silence. But not that common silence. There was a kind of heavy breathing, something wet, as if someone had their mouth against the microphone, breathing irregularly. "Who's there?" I asked. No response. Just a snap, and the line dropped. Minutes later, I heard the elevator opening. I left the apartment with a piece of wood that I used to leave next to my bed, an old reinforced broomstick. I went to the hall, and it was empty. Not a single soul. But the elevator, in fact, had the door open, alone. And the interior light flickered. I ran back, closed the door, and slept on the couch with the light on. The next day, I went to look at the cameras in the building. I talked to the doorman, who let me see the recordings. At 3 hours and 23 minutes, the elevator went up by itself to my floor. Nobody pressed anything. There was no one inside. But the most bizarre, the image from the camera in the hall of my floor was black from 3 hours and 21 minutes until 3 hours and 30 minutes, a 9-minute interval without any image recorded. The doorman claimed that it must be a system failure, but the rest of the cameras worked normally. Only that one right in front of my door was down. Coincidence? I don't believe that. After this episode, I started looking for other people who went through something similar. I went to obscure internet forums, closed groups, anonymous reports, on old sites, and I found similar. People who described presences without form, runners in dreams, voices out of time. One woman said that after spending a night in an old hotel, she began to see figures in the corners of the house. Another man said that mirrors in his house stopped reflecting properly, until one day he saw himself smiling in the reflection, while his real face remained neutral. That's when I started writing this report here, because honestly, I don't know what else to do. I have no way to prove anything. The sounds do not appear in the audios, and the few people I still talk to think I'm on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Maybe they are right. Perhaps all of this is the product of a tired, exhausted mind trying to make sense of unresolved traumas. But then night falls, and the air changes again, and I see out of the corner of my eye the hunched silhouette in the hallway. And then I realize I'm not the one losing my sanity. It is the one that is gaining space. I spent weeks convincing myself that maybe if I ignored it, everything would pass. I turned off alerts, closed the windows, stopped looking around corners. I started to leave the house more, make fun of the situation, pretend that nothing had happened. It was easier that way. After that, things stopped for a while, long enough to make me doubt everything. To convince me that it was burnout, paranoia, I went back to the routine. I worked, I studied normally, friends came to visit me, and nothing strange happened. I even took a small weekend trip with my sister, who thought I needed new air. I slept in hotels, hiked on trails, tried to reconnect. And for a long time, it worked. No figures, no whispers. The dreams disappeared. I was, at last, free. Or at least, that's what I thought. On the way back, I found the apartment clean as I left, but there was something in the air. There came a time when I just couldn't keep pretending everything was okay anymore. That suffocating routine of waking up every day, putting on a mask and playing normal, no longer worked. I tried to convince myself that it was just a phase, something that would pass over time, that everything was just something in my head. But it wasn't. And the more I tried to lead a normal life, the more things fell apart around me. I started missing work often because I couldn't sleep at night, because I woke up in the middle of the night with my heart racing, feeling that something was inside my room, watching me. He arrived late, forgot appointments, delivered wrong reports. Eventually, they called me to a meeting and fired me from the company. In college, the situation was not much different. Stories piled up, deadlines choked me, and I just couldn't focus on anything. I looked at the books and it seemed that my mind was somewhere else, always in the dark of that corridor, in that still figure, in the sounds that only I heard. I started to fail some subjects. Teachers called me to talk. Some colleagues walked away, others didn't even know that I was still enrolled. I became invisible, and not by choice. I was being swallowed up by something I couldn't even name. I was stuck in a life that no longer made sense. And every day it became clearer that either I would take a different direction for all that, or I would go crazy for good. I didn't know how it all started. I swear I had no idea. One day I started to listen, to see, to feel. And since then it seemed that my life had merged with something that did not belong to this world, to this reality. And I accepted. I accepted to live with that for too long, out of fear, out of denial, out of tiredness. But it was no longer possible. I needed to get rid of that, of whatever it was. It was either that or lose myself for good. I spent a few days with this thought hammering in my head. Decided I needed to get out of that apartment. But I knew deep down that it was not enough to change address. It was not enough to go to another neighborhood, to another city. I needed to do something more radical. break with everything, to really start over. It was then that I made a decision that to this day sounds absurd to me when I say it out loud. I would leave the country. I chose to go to a country I barely knew, on the other side of the world, with a completely different culture from mine. I needed that. Something new, pure, where I could start over without carrying the traumas and echoes of what I experienced in that damn apartment. And that's what I did. I sold everything I could. I took my savings. I dropped out of the course and went. No detailed plans, no guarantees. I just went. And you know what? For the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Real peace. It was as if, by stepping out of that territory that shaped me, I had also left behind the invisible weight that tormented me. Those were difficult times. The beginning was not easy at all. I didn't speak the language. I didn't know anyone. I worked in cafes, washed dishes, did what I could to support myself. But I was free, and that gave me strength. The years passed. Today, I can say that my life is slowly settling down. I got a steady job. I rented a small apartment. And, most importantly, I never saw or heard anything like that again. No figures, no voice, no inexplicable sound in the middle of the night. It's as if that shadow has been left behind, stuck in that place. Maybe that's right. Maybe she was attached to the apartment. Or maybe it was linked to my pain, to my past. I don't know, and honestly, I don't even want to know. What matters is that it's over. Sometimes my sister comes to visit me. Some other family members have also spent a few days here. Whenever they see me, they say I look like someone else. Lighter, calmer. And I think that's true. I feel like I'm now living, not just surviving. I never set foot in Portland again. And to be honest, I have no intention of going back. Not because I'm afraid, but because I know that that cycle has ended. And opening that door again, even if symbolically, is something I don't want. I decided to share my story because I started reading other similar accounts, people who have gone through things that no one believes, who lived with the weight of something that cannot be explained. And I understood that hiding this is giving more strength to fear. Maybe by telling my story I can help someone, even if it's just for this person to understand that they are not alone, that what she feels may even seem crazy, but that there are people who have also been through it. And he managed to overcome it. I follow here, rebuilding, living, and trying, day after day to stay firm in this new life. Today I am married, and I am waiting for my first child, and so life is remade, far from what one day almost swallowed me, and with the certainty that I made the right decision. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.